All right, so get ready because today we're diving deep, really deep into the world of Napoleon.
Yeah, we are.
And you might know him as, well, the ultimate military genius.
Right.
But we're going to go past all the battles and conquests today and uncover how this one dude basically flipped France on its head, like reshaped the whole country. And get this, his impact, it's still felt everywhere, like all over the world today. It's wild.
It really is. Most people, when they think Napoleon, they think armies, right?
Yeah.
Conquering empires, the whole bit. But his reforms, especially the legal and administrative stuff, just as revolutionary and, honestly, maybe even more impactful over time. Crazy to think about.
It's like he conquered France twice, right?
Exactly. Once with the whole military thing, and then again with laws, like boom, legal takeover.
Yeah.
And speaking of law, did you know Napoleon was kind of like obsessed with it?
Oh, absolutely.
So that's our mission today. How did he use law as his weapon?
Right. To build an empire. We're going deep into the Napoleonic Code, some seriously sneaky political moves.
Oh, yeah.
And tons of super ambitious reforms. These things changed everything.
Got to understand the context, though. France, before Napoleon.
Yeah.
Legally speaking, it was a mess.
Oh, really?
Total disaster. Imagine trying to run a country where the laws change like every other mile.
What?
Seriously. You got feudal laws, revolutionary decrees, regional customs, all clashing. That was France, pre-Napoleon.
So basically, chaos.
Pure chaos.
Right.
Ripe for a takeover, you could say.
Wow. So Napoleon sees this legal mess, right? And instead of just fixing it,
right,
he sees an opportunity, a chance to reshape the whole system to fit his vision.
Exactly. He didn't want to just fix it. He wanted to make it his own.
Okay, so picture this. Napoleon strolls in with his legal dream team, the best legal minds in France.
Oh, yeah, the best.
And he's basically like, all right, everyone, enough of this legal mess. We're making a single, unified legal system for the entire country. Make it happen.
Boom. And that's how the Napoleonic Code was born. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
This document, it's so groundbreaking, influenced legal systems all around the world. 4 centuries.
Get out. Still today.
Still today. And the thing is, it wasn't just organizing old laws. They introduced totally new ideas, radical for the time.
Oh, like what?
Like equality before the law, for all men at least.
Right, for all men. Got to emphasize that part, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. But for the time, huge deal. This idea that everyone, no matter who your parents are, is treated equally by the law.
Right. No more special treatment because you were born a duke or whatever.
Exactly. A total break from the old feudal system. Huge change.
That's massive.
It wasn't just individual equality either. The Napoleonic Code also separated church and state.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Massive power shift. Took tons of power away from the church, put it right in the government's hands.
So maybe this is where we start to see what Napoleon was really after. Centralizing power, making sure he's the one in control. Was he trying to replace the church with the state as the big authority figure?
You could definitely argue that. He knew real power wasn't just about winning battles. It was about controlling the system, the legal and administrative structure of the whole country. And the Napoleonic Code, masterpiece of social engineering, designed to basically rebuild French society from scratch.
Wow.
Another key element, can't forget this, property rights. The code really protected private ownership. Napoleon saw that as super important for economic stability.
Yeah.
To make sure the economy was strong.
Makes sense. After all the craziness of the revolution, people probably wanted a little stability.
Absolutely.
Knowing you actually owned your stuff, that must have been reassuring.
For sure.
But how did he get all these reforms done? In a country still recovering from a revolution? Did everyone just go along with it? Okay, Napoleon, whatever you say.
Well, not everyone, of course. But Napoleon, he was a master strategist. On the battlefield and off, he knew how to play the game, to keep his power, how to use propaganda, the whole thing. And let's be real, he came to power promising order, stability. That's exactly what people wanted after all the chaos and bloodshed.
It's like he was saying, France, you're getting a makeover, whether you like it or not. But seriously, once he's got his legal system all set up, what's next? What else did he want to change?
He went for the whole government structure, overhauled the entire system, made it super centralized. So imagine you're a local official, used to running things your way. Suddenly you got to answer to Paris directly. That's the kind of shift we're talking about. He created this top-down system with prefects in each department reporting straight to him. Basically, he turned France into this giant, well-oiled machine, all under his control.
Wow, so he rewrites the laws, then totally restructures the government. This guy was a control freak. But was it all about power? Or did he actually think this was the best way to run a country? Did it actually work? Did things improve?
I mean, he was definitely a control freak, no doubt about that. But to be fair, this centralized system, it made things more efficient, more organized. France needed that desperately. And get this, he didn't stop there.
Of course not. This is Napoleon.
He created a strong bureaucracy, a civil service where people were promoted based on merit, not on who their family was.
So you had to be good at your job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally different from the old way of doing things.
Wow, so he was all about competence. And loyalty, of course.
Oh, definitely loyalty.
Interesting. So it sounds like he was building a modern state. But what about the economy? A country can't run on laws and bureaucracy alone. How do you deal with the money problems France was having?
Well, he had a plan for that, too.
Yeah.
Napoleon implemented some pretty serious tax reforms, made the system fairer, more efficient at bringing in money. And guess what he did to stabilize the economy and get things growing? In 1800, he established the Bank of France.
Hold up, Napoleon, the banker. This guy was a one-man reform machine.
He was.
So we've got the legal system, the government, now the economy. It's hard to believe one person could do all this. But were people actually okay with all these changes? It sounds pretty radical.
But you can imagine not everyone was thrilled. Some people saw him as a tyrant, said he was destroying the ideals of the revolution. But Napoleon was good at keeping power, silencing his critics, and projecting this image of strength and stability.
So he was walking a tightrope, trying to change everything, but also keep control. It sounds exhausting, but we've only talked about like half of what he did. What other parts of French life did he try to transform?
You know, it's funny. Napoleon, he wasn't content with just winning battles.
Right.
Nope. He wanted to leave a legacy, like really reshape France in his image and make sure it lasted.
So he saw himself as what, like an architect?
Yeah. Rebuilding France from scratch. Yeah. And I mean, he kind of succeeded, right? We're still talking about him.
That's true. But what was driving him? Was he just like super ambitious?
Yeah.
Or did he really want to fix France after the revolution?
Probably a bit of both. But his reforms, they give us some clues.
Okay, yeah.
Take the Napoleonic Code. That wasn't just laws, you know. It was like a blueprint for the kind of society he wanted.
Oh, interesting.
Order, reason, efficiency, all that.
Yeah.
He thought a strong, centralized state, clear laws, everyone equal, that's the key to progress. Stability. And hey, France did pretty well under his rule.
Yeah, can't argue with that. But that stability came at a price, right? Didn't he, like, crack down on anyone who disagreed with him?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So any opposition, any challenge, he saw that as a threat.
Exactly. A threat to the order he built. I mean, if you think you have the answer, right, to a better society, any challenge feels like going backwards.
Right. But that can be kind of dangerous, right?
Oh, definitely.
Who gets to decide what the perfect society is, and what about the people who don't fit in?
That's the question, isn't it? Still struggling with that today, actually.
That's true.
Napoleon's story, it's like a warning. Power can be dangerous, even with good intentions.
It's a reminder, right, that even the best leaders, they can make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's on us, right?
Yeah.
The citizens to, like, keep them in check, no matter how popular they are.
Exactly. Can't just follow blindly. Got to question, think critically, talk about what kind of society we want.
And Napoleon's legacy, it's not just France, right? The Napoleonic Code, that thing had a huge impact, like, everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Huge. The clarity, uniformity, the secular authority, all that. Other countries loved it. They wanted to modernize their systems, you know?
So they saw it as a model.
Exactly. Order, individual rights, a more just society.
It's crazy, though, right? Even with something as positive as the Napoleonic Code, there are still contradictions, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Like equality before the law, awesome idea.
Groundbreaking.
But still flawed. Women were basically left out.
Totally excluded. And in a lot of ways, the code actually reinforced the old patriarchal system.
Right, like the system that kept women down.
Exactly. Can't ignore that part of his legacy. Progress and setbacks all mixed together. It's complicated.
Super complicated. Like a tapestry with like bright threads and dark threads all woven together. How do we even make sense of that?
That's the challenge. And it's why we're still fascinated by Napoleon. He's the promise and the danger of progress all rolled into one. Good and bad. Like so much of history.
It's almost like he represents, you know, the best and worst of what humans can do.
Right. Build things up, tear things down.
Exactly.
Maybe that's the biggest lesson from Napoleon. We can all shape the world, for good or bad. It's up to each of us to choose. and be careful.
Wow. So much to think about. But we've been talking about these reforms, and I'm wondering, like, how did this affect regular people? It wasn't just abstract ideas.
Oh, definitely not. It changed their lives.
Right.
Take the property rights thing, for example. That had a huge impact. Farmers, merchants, anyone who owned land.
Imagine, after years of chaos, suddenly the law protects your property. That must have been a huge relief.
Oh, absolutely. Security, stability. And the code also covered inheritance.
Oh, right.
That families could pass down their property, strengthen the whole social fabric.
But again, not everyone benefited, right?
Right. Sadly, women were often excluded from those protections.
And sometimes their situation actually got worse.
Yeah, in some cases. You have to acknowledge that. Even with all the progress, there were still big inequalities. Progress isn't always a straight line. Messy, uneven, some groups benefit more than others. It's complicated.
So complicated. It's like peeling an onion. There's always another layer.
Exactly. That's what makes history so interesting. It's not just dates and names. It's about understanding the human experience.
And trying to make sense of the past.
Exactly. Especially with someone like Napoleon. But, there's another side to his legacy we haven't talked about.
Oh, what's that?
The arts, culture. Napoleon was a master of symbolism, imagery. He knew how powerful art could be to project an image of grandeur, authority.
Right, like all those paintings of him on horseback, leading his armies. It's like the ultimate propaganda. He built this image of himself as a strong, almost mythical leader.
Totally. He knew exactly how to shape public perception. And his support for the arts, it really shaped French culture. He built grand monuments like the Arc de Triomphe to celebrate his victories, inspire national pride.
And wasn't there a style of furniture named after him?
Yeah. Empire style. All about classical motifs, super opulent. The guy was a branding genius, centuries ahead of his time.
Amazing. But it wasn't all just for show, right? Didn't he also make art more accessible to ordinary people?
Oh, yeah, he did. Established institutions like the Louvre Museum,
The Louvre, huh?
Made art part of the national heritage. So yeah, he was a master manipulator, but he also really appreciated art. He understood its power.
It's like another example of that mix of power, progress, ambition, legacy. It's all there in his life.
Exactly. Napoleon knew how to use everything to his advantage. Laws, administration, art, architecture, all to get what he wanted, to cement his place in history.
But what about education? We haven't talked about that yet. He seemed to have a plan for everything. How did he approach education, especially in a country that had just gone through such a radical change?
Yeah, education, big one. Napoleon knew to really change France, he had to change how people thought, especially the next generation, the future leaders.
So he saw education as like a tool.
Absolutely. Instill loyalty, promote his vision, make sure his changes stuck for generations to come.
So how do you do it? Revamp the schools they already had?
He did some of that, yeah. But he also created new ones, to match his vision, like the Lyceums system. Basically state-funded secondary schools for the elite.
Oh, fancy. So like elite academies to create little Napoleons.
Kind of. Train them to be leaders. And Napoleon, he loved discipline, obedience, all that.
Right, of course. So I bet the education was super strict, right? All military drills and stuff.
Some of that, for sure. But it was broader than you might think. Math, science, literature, even philosophy.
Wow, really? I thought it would be more like military focused. So he wasn't just making soldiers. He wanted well-rounded citizens to contribute to society.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't totally neutral.
Oh, right, of course. It was still Napoleon's France.
History, literature, all that. It was taught to glorify France, make people feel patriotic. Remember, Napoleon wanted to unify the nation and keep his power.
Right. So education wasn't just about like learning. It was about shaping people's minds, making them loyal to him. It's kind of like brainwashing, isn't it?
It's definitely got that element, yeah. But you could argue any education system does that to some extent.
Right, even in a democracy.
Even then. It's about what the society values, right? Napoleon was just more obvious about it, more intentional.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good reminder that education, it's never really neutral. It always reflects certain values, beliefs. We've got to think critically about that, talk about what kind of education we want.
Absolutely. But, zooming out a bit, looking at the bigger picture, it's amazing how much history can teach us about today. Napoleon, his rise to power, the reforms, even his mistakes. There are so many parallels to our own time.
Totally. It's like we can look back at the past and see ourselves reflected in it. What do you think are some of the biggest similarities between Napoleon's time and now? What lessons can we learn from him for the problems we're facing today?
Well, one big one is, like, populism and strongman leaders. Napoleon came to power when things were crazy, uncertain, kind of like today, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
People wanted someone to fix things, provide stability. And Napoleon was like, I'm your guy.
It's like that pattern that keeps repeating in history. When things are bad, people want a strong leader, someone who promises easy solutions. We see it all the time, don't we?
All the time. And these leaders, they play on people's fears, anxieties. They're like, I'm the outsider, I'll shake things up, bring back order. Napoleon did that perfectly.
Yeah.
The champion of the people, defender of the revolution. But then he gets power and his system. It's just as authoritarian as the monarchy he replaced.
It's like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly. So we have to be careful. Look past the slogans, the promises. What are they actually doing?
Right. We can't just be swept up by the hype. We have to think for ourselves.
Exactly. Another parallel is this tension between individual freedom and collective security. On one hand, Napoleon wanted to improve people's lives, but he also wanted to make the state stronger, centralize power, enforce conformity, less freedom, more security. We're dealing with that today too. Surveillance, data privacy, national security. How much control should the government have? It's the same debate.
It's that balance every society struggles with, right? How much freedom are we willing to give up to feel safe? And when there's a crisis, that balance can shift quickly.
It really can. And that's why it's so important to be informed, to participate. We need to talk about these trade-offs, weigh the pros and cons, make our voices heard.
So it all goes back to being informed, engaged citizens. We can't just sit back and watch. We have to participate, ask questions, hold our leaders accountable, help create the future we want.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And last but not least, Napoleon's story is a warning about power, how seductive it is, how dangerous ambition can be. He rose so fast, but his fall was just as fast. He got blinded by his own ambition, made mistakes, lost it all.
It's the classic tragic hero story, right? From literature, from history, power corrupts, even with good intentions. That's why we need checks and balances, to keep anyone from getting too much power.
Absolutely. We have to protect our democracy, make sure power is shared, that no one is above the law.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible. We covered so much. Napoleon's reforms, his impact on France, on the world, his legacy, and even how it all connects to today. It's amazing what we can learn from one person, even centuries later.
It really is. History is so powerful. It helps us understand who we are, where we came from, and where we're going.
So as we wrap up our Napoleon journey, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this?
Keep questioning, keep exploring. History is more than just facts and dates. It's full of amazing stories, and it's got lessons for all of us. The more we understand the past, the better we can understand ourselves and the world around us.
That's a great takeaway. And hey, who knows? Maybe our next deep dive will be about another fascinating person who shook things up, changed the world, and left behind a legacy that still makes us think today. Until then, stay curious out there.